Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Board Shorts. My name is Ben Brooks. I'm the Managing Director here at Agency Express. This is your bite-sized guide to becoming a franchisee. Once again, I'm joined by franchise royalty in the booth today. My good friend Louise has decided to grace us with her presence. So I'm not going to introduce her. Perhaps, Louise, if you could introduce yourself.
Oh, you're very kind, Ben. Big me up, and I hope I don't let you down there. My name is Louise Harris. I have been in franchising since 2006, so 20 years. I started as a franchisee. I was also a franchisor, and now, having sold that business, I work primarily writing operations manuals, which is may sound very dull, but I feel it's quite interesting.
No, it's not dull at all, because that's what I want to talk to you about today. So thanks for bringing that up without me even prompting you. Let's start with the obvious question, because most people who are going to be listening to this are people who are interested in franchising and becoming a franchisee of a UK franchise business. And one of the most important parts of that is the franchise manual, or as you've called it there, the operations manual. So let's start with the easy question. What's an operations manual?
It's actually quite it's a little bit more complex than just being able to say it's this, because there's a little bit of division I have noticed. Um, I'm often referred business by from consultants, but also from the businesses themselves. And for me, the operations manual is the franchise manual, and it gives you everything. It tells an individual how to run their business. So that will be everything from how to get business, how to deliver that business, and how to make money from it, how to account for it, and any reporting, but it's literally everything. And I always like to think of it as the DNA of that business. So it's whatever particularly is unique or that the franchisor has learned, or it is actually applicable to non-franchised businesses, but it's any business has documented their processes.
Yeah, it's a how-to guide, isn't it? I think it was described to me once as when you get your VCR or your VCR. God, that's ages. When you get your DVD player and you plug it in, and you've got to try to understand how everything works. It's the manual which sits behind it to show you how to use it. It's not that you're not going to have been taught how to use it by the people that sold it to you, but it's the manual that sits behind it for you to refer back to. So, what's in it? I mean, for an average operations manual, an average franchise manual, what are we actually going to find inside?
Well, lots of chapters, lots of information. You're going to find out there's a primary piece around being a franchisee. So, what expectations are there on you? What sort of performance level ideas are there? What's your service level agreements, if there's such a thing in your business? What's really expected of you? What does good look like? But also what happens if bad happens. So if something goes wrong, but it will be very focused, first of all, around the initial piece around expectations between you and the franchisor, so relationships. And then it talks, as I mentioned, about the sales and the marketing process. So how do you get business? And what I love to see in a manual is always an element of this is what we have found to be brilliant. So it's kind of that special ingredient that you have learned as a franchisor that makes it work, that makes your business just that little bit special. In some cases, it's unique. There are unique propositions, but what is it that you'll learn? What is it that you're sharing? And it will give lots of information about, once you've got the business, how you would be expected to deliver it, your customer interaction, how you will handle certain situations, if there are any problems, God forbid that there are any complaints, how does the franchisor expect you to handle it, but also what support is available. It's the franchisor saying, look, we're here. Yeah, we're going to write all this down. We're going to give you all this information, but we're here to help you to success. But then there's also the how to run a business part, because there is accounts to do and administration to do. And some companies will go very in depth about relationships with company's house, the HMRC, all of that. Others will say you need to run the business efficiently and be a little bit broad brush. But I like it when people have really invested the time in their manuals.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the manual itself has a lot to do with the franchise agreement, doesn't it? So I think there can be some confusion perhaps sometimes about what is a franchise agreement and then what is a franchise manual or an operations manual. So what are the differences there? What do people
Yeah.
look for?
It's a really good reference. There are actually a few key documents in franchising. There's the initial information that's provided to a franchisee, but at the point of signing, they sign a franchise agreement, and pretty much all the way through that agreement, it will reference the manual or whatever that business has chosen to call it, because the operations manual still has a bit of a dusty old tome theory about it. So on average, there's about 60 references to the operations manual.
Wow.
So effectively, what the franchisor is saying is you're going to do some reporting, but it'll be what happens with that will be in the manual. And the reason for that is that it's the manual that will change and adapt and grow with the franchise. So frequently, for example, if social media outlets change or marketing styles change, the franchise agreement will say you must follow a specific marketing process, you must follow the rules and details as in the manual. And the
Right.
manual will say, we no longer support X, for example, we want to be on Instagram. This is what we've decided, and this is the process. So it enables the company, the franchisor, to be a little bit more adaptable and change things, hopefully not overnight, not on a whim, but it will certainly guide them to keep current. So the franchise agreement is usually the document that is most referred to. So the Ops manual will undoubtedly say, if in any doubt, the franchise agreement prevails. So it's incumbent on the franchisor to make sure that it's actually kept up to date and that
Yeah.
it's relevant and that's in line with the franchise agreement.
Yeah, so that's quite a key point, isn't it? Because the franchise manual, the operations manual can change, whereas the franchise agreement primarily doesn't change. So
Yeah.
those two things are quite different in that respect. Okay, so presumably then, as this is such a key document for any franchisee looking to join a franchise network, they need to see it, right? So should they be asking the franchisor to see this document as part of the process of being
Mm.
onboarded?
Yes and no. So the franchise operations manual will inevitably contain a significant amount of IP, intellectual property for the company. And you're buying a business that you actually don't know what that IP necessarily is or what the special ingredients are before you actually start trading. So there's always a little bit of a disconnect for franchisors. They're nervous. What the franchisee needs to be able to do is to satisfy themselves that there is a franchise manual, that there is a reference point for them to use, and that it's current and relevant. And I think so. Whilst it's fine that I might sit in an interview with you, Ben, I'm sure this doesn't happen, and you open a big dusty manual. I know that's not the case, but you open it up, you say, "This is our manual." Off you go. I would like to see franchisees ask other franchisees, "Is there a manual? How do you get that information? Is it up to date?" Um,
Yeah.
I would say that most franchisors know that their manual is probably slightly out of date because they're busy doing their business. But in general, they know that it's absolutely paramount that that manual reflects what the franchisees should be doing. And that could be in the form of, an email or a memo update or any sort of communication.
Okay. So the answer is yes and no. So when they're going through that onboarding process, they need to find a way to make sure they're happy with what the manual contents are, but without necessarily sitting down and reading the whole thing because they can be pretty big, can't they? So some franchise manuals, operations manuals, if we take a large franchisor group, someone like McDonald's, that's going to be a pretty significant
Oh, yeah.
document, isn't it? Yeah. So
Yeah.
that I guess the question then falls as to how you make sure that you're happy. But I would certainly be happy to share with the franchisee who's coming through that process sections of the manual, perhaps about the day-to-day operations or how the system works, that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. Okay.
And if a franchisor is a British Franchise Association member, they will have had to evidence that there is a manual in place as well.
Yeah.
So there's just that extra little bit of a tick box.
Okay. You referenced a couple of times the dusty old tome, which gets dragged off the shelf. I'm presuming that isn't really the way it's done these days. So how does that
I
normally
guess I
happen?
don't know how many there are out there that are still secretly on paper. I think that there are very few. Um, what I have seen a lot of are sort of central shared folders of PDFs and videos and lots of information. I always like the idea that the manual becomes a knowledge center rather than just a how-to guide. I mean, you reference the television, the guide that comes with your television, and I don't think that there are very many people who read the whole of that. You've got to make it something that people can access when they need it and the bits that they need at the time that they need it. So PDFs were a really great workaround for a lot of people and that central information hub because you can search to some extent, you can find the right document and you can find the information you need. I err towards the presentation of the manual in a sort of website or almost a Wikipedia style information
Okay.
center that is really searchable and visual. So the thing that always slightly wound me up as a franchisee was that it would reference a form and the form might be called check-in because I was in lettings, check-in form. And I'd go to find the check-in form and it would now be called checking in your tenant.
Sure.
So it wasn't actually called that anymore. It couldn't be linked because those were the old days, but it never quite gelled. So actually having for me, a picture of which form I'm looking for and just being able to download it from that particular reference is hugely valuable. Just really simple things where the franchisor can make it easy for the franchisee to have the right information at the right time. Franchisees are not looking at this franchise manual 24/7. I want them to dip into it when they need it for what they need it for. And that's why it's got to be on time and relevant and up to date and all of those things that information really is key. So the answer coming back to it is that's how I see information being shared. Um, if you're progressive, there will be some form of chatbot on there that you can ask within the realms of your ops manual. A lot of questions, more complex questions, maybe. So it takes data from different places. But for me, it also should cater for, so literally the paper manual appeals to some people. There's no doubt that some people will sit and read those from cover to cover. I would
Yeah.
say that's less than 1% now. What we want is to appeal to neurodivergent, people who don't enjoy reading, people who actually want to consume video, people who are audio learners or kinesthetic learners, which is the whole framework. And also, it does appeal to people who are possibly less literate or have language difficulties.
Mm.
One of my favorite manuals was translating a whole session, the whole thing into Gujarati because the
Wow.
entire kitchen staff spoke Gujarati. They spoke a totally different language. So let's make it easy for them. But let's appeal to everyone. So if you are someone who learns through just reading something, it's there. If you like a bullet point, I'm very fond of a bullet point. I find it very easy to see information that way. Or if you just want a video with a commentary on it, it's all there. If you had one type of franchisee and you knew they were always going to be of a very specific ilk, then that would be great because you would just write for them. But actually what the manual needs to do is it needs to appeal to all of your franchisees. And that's the common denominator, really.
Yeah, it's got to be universal across the board. Interesting there what you said about that the media types of how that information is passed on to franchisees are changing. So using video, using audio, using AI as well in there too. I think that's undoubtedly the direction of travel. Right, I've had 15 minutes from you, so I'm gonna finish up with the one question that I asked to everyone. Having been a franchisee and having been a franchisor, and now having supported franchisors in the business services that you provide, what's the one bit of advice you would give to a franchisee going through the due diligence process?
Ask the questions and get the answers. Wait for the answers. So if somebody hedges around it and doesn't actually give you a straight answer, there's a reason. Ask it again, find another way, but ask the questions and get comfortable with what the business is. Fall in love with it, then pick it apart, but really, make sure you have the information that you need.
Great advice. Louise, thank you so much for giving us 15 minutes of your time today to tell us all about franchise manuals and operations manuals. Fascinating as always. That just leaves it for me to say thank you very much for joining us today on Board Shorts. Hopefully we'll see you again soon.